All right, thank you everyone for coming today to the second electrochemistry shop talk. We have been doing this series since March, and now we have another speaker. Last time we were talking about more like electrochemistry fundamentals, and this time we'll talk about batteries. So today is my pleasure to introduce Yixian Wang. He's a grad student in the Mitlin group from the Material Science and Engineering program. And he has a very interesting work about how to design current collectors and stable anodes for batteries. But I think it's time for Yixian to explain us some interesting concepts today. Thank you everyone also coming not coming here, but staying online. So we hope you can enjoy this meeting as well. And we'll upload this meeting to social media, so stay tuned. All right. Okay, so Yixian, take it away.
All right. Thank you for the introduction. And thank you, Raul, Anthony, for the invitation. And thanks to the ECS local chapter that can bring so many talented people. I think it's a good opportunity to exchange ideas. And also thank you everyone for coming. Again, it's Friday afternoon, 5 p.m. I hope I can make a good Friday evening. So, all right. So my talk today is going to be the design principles of current collectors for stable anode-free batteries. Actually, I've been thinking the topic for quite a while since this is my 5th year in terms of my PhD. So my research spans quite a few directions like cathode, electrolyte, anode, and solids from both like liquid and solid-state batteries. So I guess there are probably a lot of things we can discuss, but that's the thing I feel more comfortable to talk with since I've been doing this for almost like 3 years. So, all right, so let's start. All right, here. Okay, first of all, normally I put this slide at the end, but just in case I run out of time. So, and those slides are really important because without my supervisor, but without those people, now, all my research won't happen, including all those publications. So first of all, I would thank my supervisor, Dave Mitlin. He's a super nice professor. He works tirelessly to make sure we are getting well funded. And also he provides us a lot of resources and a lot of insights into our paper. And also including our collaborator, Graham Hunkelman. I believe his office is somewhere in this building. And also his students Naman, Mai, Jiang, who help us the simulation, this ADFT simulation work. And also our collaborator, John, at Los Alamos National Lab. Basically, all the cryo electron microscopy was done at Lano. Also, Parsa from Purdue University and his student Barry, they did the mesoscale simulation, which you will see in my talk. And last but not least, Jackie Nana from Slack, who provides us with both funding and also a lot of discussion and guidance. Also, a lot of my colleague, Huidong, who right now is an engineer at Ribbon, and EGA is postdoc at University of Maryland, and Hugo, who is SPS expert at UT-Austin. All right. Also, my colleague Hong Chang, also Rika, who is sitting here, and Hong Chang. And so. All right. So when it comes to batteries, I guess everyone's somehow familiar with batteries, one of the most popular energy storage devices. Again, the battery is only a device, so a lot of people think batteries are clean energy, but it's not always be the case. It's depending on how you generate the electricity. For example, if your electricity was generated by some renewable energy, then you can say that's a clean energy. However, most of the electricity right now are generated by the combustion of fossil fuels. So the battery just provides us with the opportunity to use the clean energy and to store those energy, which is really important, device right now. So I'm listing here, but not very comprehensively, but some of the major challenges we have for our today's lithium-ion batteries, which, for example, right now, as you see, probably, for example, from Tesla, if you check price, I think the cost of almost $40K somewhere all the way to $100K. So why it makes so expensive? I guess one of the major costs are from the batteries, because the lithium is not an abundant element, so it's scarce on Earth, and the lithium precursor is expensive. Although the price right now has almost dropped to 50% compared to its highest level, but it's still expensive. So how can we reduce the cost? Maybe we can just improve the mining and also through the recycling. But another thing I want to talk is alternatively, the lithium in the group 1, in the periodic table, you have lithium, you have hydrogen, lithium, sodium, potassium. So we might consider some alternative ways, for example, the sodium and potassium batteries, which I will talk later. So something also like manufacturing, for example, like people are now interested in the dry electrode process, how to improve the efficiency or the binder, something like those. And also the performance is also very important. For example, like low temperature performance, let's say in the northern part of the country, where in the winter, the temperature can drop like pretty low, where your battery needs to be have a very good low temperature tolerance. So that's mainly be done through the electrical optimization, which is not the focus of my talk. And also people are trying to increase this energy density, which everyone likes to see the extended driving mileage of your car or extended usage of your cell phones every day. So in order to reach higher energy density, so one typical way is to replace the graphite anode, which is used in commercial lithium-ion batteries by the so-called metal anode, for example, the lithium metal, because it has really high theoretical capacity. But there's gonna be a lot of issues which I will discuss later. And also, one of the very novel designs, so-called the anode-free design, which is going to be the focus of my talk today, it will kind of achieve almost a maximized energy density without changing any of the chemistry. So also, people are trying to pursue fast charging, basically through the electrolyte and electrode optimization. And last but not least, the safety. Right now, a lot of people are a little bit hesitant to have the electric vehicles because people have already seen a lot of combustion, some kind of fires that was caused by the lithium batteries. So I guess one of the solutions for this in terms of the safety is to replace the flammable electrolyte with the solid electrolyte. So because solid electrolyte is not flammable, which may intrinsically solve the problem. So which I will touch a little bit based on the solid electrolyte as well, because solid electrolyte is one of our major focus in our group right now. All right. So again, our today's topic will cover those three keywords. Basically, you have the sodium potassium batteries, anode-free, and solid electrolyte. Okay. Here we go. So first of all, what is anode-free batteries? So on the left side, you see this is the typical cartoon of the typical lithium-ion batteries. You have the anode and cathode. It has separator. Definitely, you have the electrolyte. In between, in the both electrode, you have the redox reactions where the lithium-ion shuffle from one side to the other, and then you have the electrons flow forward and backward depending on the charge and discharge. So that's why it kind of converts the electrical energy to the chemical energy in the battery system. So in the anode-free batteries, just like its name means, this by comparison, it's just you can get rid of all the anode. So literally, it shouldn't call the anode-free because in a battery, there always be an anode. Otherwise, you cannot make a battery without anode. So it only means that there is no anode materials. There's only a baseline or a bare current collector on the anode side. So all the active lithium are stored originally in your cathode, while your anode side is zero excess lithium. So that's why you kind of just to reduce the weight by the anode side. Therefore, you can achieve a very high energy density. So some of the key advantage of anode-free battery, including, of course, the high energy density, because the weight is much lighter, and also you're kind of reduce the cost and also some safety risks. And another thing is simplify the manufacturing because you don't have to manufacture in the graphite anode, for example. And also, it's easy for recycling since you only have the current collector on the anode side. However, there's a lot of points in anode-free batteries, and one of the major things is since there's zero lithium, you don't have any of the lithium reservoir to compensate your lithium loss during cycling. For example, you have those pepper mill. Every time you spread some pepper on your stick, let's say, and somehow you will just run out of all the peppers, right? Even though you don't realize you're using the peppers in the jar. So same thing with lithium-ion anode-free batteries. Every time even though you just lose tiny amount of lithium in every cycle, eventually you're running out all the available lithium, and finally your cell just dies or You couldn't just extract any of the capacity. So that's because the lithium, also the lithium plating and stripping on the counter is crucial. And that also will determine how like the efficiency on the plating and stripping side. And also that's why the final level called the rapid capacity decay. So, the copper is used as the commercial, like anode current factor in the commercial lithium-ion batteries. So people would think, okay, how about just using directly use copper as the current factor in the anode-free cells? Well, the copper actually turns out to be not a good substrate. Why? Because as you can see from the photos showing here, the lithium or sodium basically it's metal phobic. No matter it's lithium or sodium, it doesn't like to stay on the surface of copper. It's formed those like you see the non-homogeneous or like even just stay as a ball on top of the copper. So the poor metal wetting will lead to a lot of problems. For example, the dendrite growth. You probably see those filamentary or those needle or noodle-like structure. Basically, that's called the dendrite in the batteries, which is harmful because the dendrite could just build up and finally just penetrate your separator, lead to the shorting of your cell. Another thing is also so-called dead metal because a lot of dendrites, if during the stripping process, if the roots of the dendrite got disconnected or electrochemically inactive, then the metal is called dead because they are no longer active. So also like ICI, which stand for a solid electrolyte interface, will just basically will thickening of the electrolyte, and the ICI it forms with the consumption of your electrolyte. So the more of the ICI, the more consumption of your electrolyte. And finally, it may lead to depletion of your electrolyte, also the increase of your cell like polarization and over potentials, a lot of issues. All right, so what are the possible strategies to solve these issues? So here I just kind of summarize of some previous or pioneering work on the surface engineering of the current factor. For example, people have applied some carbon and antimony coating to promote the sodium wetting. And also in another work published in EM 2021, they introduced some kind of liquid metal, basically still like gallium, indium, like tin alloys. So the alloying strategies is one of the most effective ways because the alloy can make the surface, like turning the surface from lithiophobic or sodiophobic to the philic. So which means that it kind of promotes the metal wetting. However, if you use an alloy, the alloy reactions accompanies with volume change. So every time you see there's alloy and the alloy, it comes volume just expansion and then volume shrinkage. And if you do repeatedly this process, it might lead to the falling off those active form. So that's basically one of the side effect of using those typical alloy materials. So how do we solve this problem? Again, so we look at the periodic table. So right now I'm just summarize those typical elements that might form alloy with either lithium or sodium or both. So some typical elements including like silicon, germanium, tin, zinc, silver, gold, or bismuth, antimony. So they all have somehow a typical feature that they will undergo reversible alloy and they all are reaction under a relatively low anodic voltage. So the low anodic voltage I'm referring to is about 1 volt. Let's say the silicon, for example, the lithium silicon, I think the alloy reaction happens like 0.2 or 0.3 volt. And tin might start a much early stage, like 0.1 volt. However, so when we check there is a certain group like group 16, especially the sulfur, selenium, tellurium, all those have been reported as very good cathode materials. So if you use the cathode, that means you have relatively high anodic potential. It won't undergo like the alloy reactions or decomposition process under relatively high voltage. For example, if your lithium sulfur is almost 2.3 volt, lithium selenide or lithium telluride is almost like all approaching to 2 volt. And that's not gonna be, so in your battery, in the anode side, you're never gonna reach such high voltage. So which gives us some confidence to see if we can use those materials as some kind of substrate to promote metal wetting. So basically that's our one of the principles we use to the following design of our materials. So given by this, so we should choose tellurium and the sulfur in the first place because we don't know which of those so-called chalcogen, can give us the best performance. So we should pick up the two typical elements because oxygen is gas, right? You cannot just do with oxygen. We just do the sulfur and tellurium. Basically, what we do is for the first work, we just choose the copper foam. The copper foam is a similar thing as copper foil. It's like instead of the 2D copper foil, those are the 3D structures, which is good because 3D structures somehow it has a more robust structure, and also it can reduce the local current density because it has 3D structure. The electron can flow relatively faster than the 2D material. So that's why we start with those commercial copper foam. We coated or treated the surface with either tellurium and sulfur. So it's like in situ form some kind of textures on top of the surface. So in the case of tellurium, form those nanosheets, and in the case of sulfur, it's form some granular structure, as you can see. Okay, so we just use those modified current factors as substrate, and we test we make a cell either against this is in the sodium. So we make a sodium cell using this. Again, this is a half cell. It's not a full cell data. Basically, on the one side you have the modified current factor, on the other side just like pure sodium foil. So here is some half cell cycle data. So in the first cycle, as you can see, about a very you can see there's a plateau in the first cycle. So which it basically those like coated material will react with your sodium in the first cycle. As you can see, this is the plateau, and the same thing if you use sulfur one, that also has maybe a few plateaus. However, during your first charge, you see here, it doesn't give you any of the capacity, which again proves our hypothesis this material is not reversible alloy and de-alloy reactions. And also in the subsequent cycles, there's almost like zero capacity can be extracted. So those, which again proves that those materials are stable at the anode side given the potential window like up to 1 volt. Okay, so here is some of the SEM images of the morphology. Again, this is before the activation. This is after cycling. So those texture change to some nanoparticles. And for the tellurium case, it's more uniform. And for the sulfur case, you can see some of the particles already fall from the current collector, which we assume that the chemical affinity of those the sulfide and telluride may have a little bit difference. So that's why in the later you will see the tellurium modified has a better performance compared with sulfur one, although both of them are better than the baseline or uncoated current collector. So with that, I'm gonna show you a few electrochemical data again. So okay, it looks better. So those are testing the half cells, which again using the sodium foil, and there's the typical like sodium 1 molar sodium PF6 in J2, very typical electrolyte, no any of the optimization of the electrolyte. So here, I quickly just go through the data. Basically, the first two figures show your nucleus over potential. Basically, you have modified substrate, you have a much lower nucleus over potential because those surfaces again it promotes the binding of the sodium. So that's why you don't have such high driving force to form the sodium nucleus. Again, it shows like improved cycling performance, Coulombic efficiency, rate performance. Again, long-term cycle. I kind of just quickly go through this because I'm gonna talk more about some interesting stuff. Since I guess a lot of audiences here may not just work on the battery, so I'm trying to make my talk like more comprehensive and more informative. So again, you have a question, feel free to interrupt me and just ask a question. For example, just explain what does this figure mean or what does this mean. So I'm happy to take any questions you see in the chat. All right. So on the right side, this is very one of my favorite experiments I did. So what I did is I made a customized electrolyte. Basically, I only coated part of the copper collectors with tellurium, leave the other half like I modified or I covered. Then I make a half cell again versus sodium metal. I electrodeposit sodium on top of the collectors. And after accumulating certain capacity, we desample the cell. And now we look at the image, you can see the sodium preferentially just deposited on the side where it had those tellurium coating. And on the other side, you barely see just very very, I would say, small portion of the modified side was covered by sodium metal, which again proves our hypothesis that those surface coating really promotes the sodium wetting. It's very straightforward experiments. And now we look at the microstructures using STM. You can see on top on those things are deposit different capacity from 1 all the way to 5. So 1 milliampere hour per square centimeter in sodium metal batteries correspond to around 10 micron of sodium, or just like 10 micron thickness. So 5 milliampere is 50 microns. So for the modified substrate, you can see is the sodium deposit very uniform and dense, through 1 to 5. However, if you use baseline copper and modified current character, you can see the dendrite starting to grow even at a very early stage and all over to the 5 milliampere hour. So this again proves that the modified character is a key to prove the sodium wetting and to prevent dendrite growth from the onset. Now I'm gonna show you some videos, which is pretty interesting. So basically, I want to explain on the left side, you have those baseline cover foam. On the right side, titanium coated foam. So let's see what we have. So on the one side, this is the thermal wetting. So basically, the cells that put on the hot plate is under around 300 degrees C. So now I put a small sodium, so it melts immediately. And on the one case, you see those sodium melt, it forms like a ball. It doesn't wet the surface, no matter how hard trying to push. I can just easily play around with it by moving the sodium from one place to the other. And now finally it stays at the ball, and the contact angle is around 130 H, which again proves non-wetting behavior of those sodium. So let's see what happens with the modified collectors. Again, a small chunk of sodium put on the preheated substrate. Yeah, you see sodium just quickly just melts or just infiltrates into the collector. And after that, you can see the kind it's almost like zero, obviously. So it's fully wets the whole structure. So that gives us again a very direct of the yes.
Thanks for the question. You were doing this is the power, so
yes.
Did you each person?
Yes, exactly. All the measurement have been done in the ground, inside the ground for sure, because sodium is very reactive with air and moisture. So all the you see is I just basically just transfer my iPhone inside the glove box and took those videos. Yeah, probably should get a good camera, but yeah. Yeah. All right. So yeah, again, so this is our result are pretty I would say kind of give us the confidence to conclude that those modified current factor can promote the performance. So now we've seen that. Okay, yes.
I have a question. So I've seen some work where they looked at hydrophobic statues to try to preserve them because they don't want water to penetrate. So they define it of hydrophobicity and whatnot by the angle of wetting against of the structure. So what angle is ideal for this kind of application of how much does it have to penetrate for it to be successful?
Right. I think in terms of penetration, this is different because if you have a 2D, it's permeable or it's non-penetrating, it's not, for example, you have copper foil, so it cannot penetrate through the copper foil. They normally can compare the angle, basically it's like blunt angle or sharp angle, they can call it whether it's wetted or non-wetted. But since these are a 3D structure, sodium can literally just go through the structure. So I guess the concept may be a little bit different than the typical concept. So basically what is either not wet or it's fully wet. So there's no something in between. Yeah, unless yes.
Sorry, I have one more question. So when you did this experiment with sulfur, palladium, or the other space elements, did it have this similar effect, which is completely wet, or less?
A good question. So for the sulfur we tried, yes, it's similar things because sulfur is already sodiophilic. Which I will see next. Our simulation result also show that the sulfur should also have the similar performance. But again, I guess why we choose tellurium because tellurium give us, I forgot to mention in the previous slide. So the tellurium gives the best performance out of sulfur. So that's why we keep to tellurium as our focus in the following experiments. Yeah, sorry, good question. I should mention this, sorry, to miss this point. So at the end, I'm trying to, basically, these are some DFT and some mesoscale simulation done by our collaborators. I'm not going through the details, and I'm not expert in terms of the simulation. So what the results are like, we build some models, basically we compare the binding energies of, for example, the four atoms, 4 or 5 atoms and clusters. Basically, we turn like if it's clusters, if it's more preferential to form cluster, then it's more like, it's related to dendrite growth. It's more like if the atomic growth is more preferable, then the planetary growth might be like favored. So then we calculate the binding energy like between those two configurations. Then we can conclude which one is more favorable through those simulations. And then those are the results. So basically, for example, for the copper, the binding energies like between the atom and the cluster is almost the same, which means that the sodium actually does not have there's no preference, at least no like in terms of thermodynamic preference, whether it's from dendrite or like planetary growth. So it's more like connectivity factor. That's why under extremely low current, we might be able to see a very uniform like deposition even using copper. However, if you use relatively high current, then the like dendrite probably to be more favored because that's more associated with kinetic factors, and dendrite seems to be a more like kinetically favorable way for the sodium to grow. However, for the tellurium and sulfur modified ones, those atomic has a lower like binding energy compared with cluster, which is prove that the atomic growth is more proper, like favorable. Yes.
Did you do calculations where you have multiple layers of sodium?
Again, this is a good question. I'm gonna answer the question which we did for lithium. Unfortunately, we didn't do the sodium since we didn't realize this the issue. I'll probably show you a hidden slide, which I'm not showing it here. That's gonna be yes, it's really good question. So I'll show you promise. So basically the conclusion is that okay, the sodium telluride promotes the planar rather than cluster growth. Yeah. All right. So and this, since I don't have the application for anode-free batteries, I don't kind of escape the performance. Basically, I use it for like the whole cells, not anode-free, the anode access exactly, which the tellurium ones gives a very good performance. But since it's not a box here, I'm gonna move to the next research, which I use some similar ideas. So it's again this time instead of the copper foil, I directly modify the surface of copper foil, which is the commercial copper foil. And instead of doing the sodium, liquid sodium system, I should use on the lithium solid state. Why? I guess like, first of all, we get the good things, we don't shoot different reactions, right? So we just take the material into solid state batteries, and we were surprising to find this also works very well in the solid state batteries. So the solid state batteries, the liquid ones, probably like people who do battery, you make those small tiny cone cells to test those like performance. But for the solid state batteries, we have to use those like so-called peak cell. Why? Because the solid state batteries, since you don't have those liquid electrolyte, the contact between your like solid particles and also your anode, your cathode is really the key. So that's why you need some so-called stack pressure. So with those designs, you see those small three small screws. Basically, by tightening those screws, you can apply the pressure to the cell. Basically, you can maintain a stack pressure. Yes.
Is there any solid state solvent?
Some kind of company are trying to develop the solid state, but I don't think there's any commercial ones.
I was going to ask how they handle that issue and there's commercial.
Yeah, I guess it's still under research for solid. Yeah, there's like bunch of issue with solid state, but since our focus on the tune character, I kind of just ignore the introducing those issues. So basically, just trying to introduce what kind of cells we use testing those solid state batteries. And again, similarly, I won't just trying to repeat, but again, similar things for the lithium tellurium cells. In the first cycle, you got those small. You can see this is the enlarged area of the first plating or the first like activation. You got the plateau basically corresponds to the reaction between the telluride with your lithium, and during the first like stripping side, you couldn't see any of the plateau, which again those alloy reactions are non-reversible. So again, kind of just move to the next slide. So those are a bunch of electrochemical data, which again proves that the tellurium ones give the higher efficiency and also like a more stable cycling performance. So, okay, I want to spend some time talking about these slides. So this is on the left side is some of the cryo-electron microscopy images which done under like the with the help of John Watt, one of the scientists at Los Alamos National Lab. So why we need the cryo-electron microscopy? Because those are the Fox-on beams. Because Fox-on beam basically have the gallium ion, which is like you can cut through the surface, you can see the cross sections. And why we need the cryo-electron microscopy? Because the sodium and the lithium have a relatively low melting point. If you use like under room temperature, the melting process might generate some heat and might melt your sample. And also since we use the gallium, like Ga, the gallium ions to melt the samples, and the room temperature, the lithium will form alloy gallium. It's kind of just ruin your sample and damage your sample, the interface, cause a lot of artifacts. So, but if you put in the cryo temperature, let's say 100 minus 150 degrees C, you can reduce the reaction between lithium and the gallium ion, and also can try to protect your the integrity of your sample like cross sections. So all the result you see right now is the Cryo-EM. So yes.
It's typical chemistry. How does the reaction take place? It should be slow, or
I would say it's pretty slow. There's still some gallium implantation into the cross section, which you probably see. Okay, I didn't show you that here, but you will probably see some gallium still in the interaction. But at least like it won't cause a lot of artifact to the. You kind of protect the cross section in terms of morphology. But that chemistry might cause some issues as well. So all right, so here you can see basically on the left side, it's just like schematic of the stage of the cell. Basically on the top, you got the solid electrolyte, which we use like sulfide, which is one of the most common solid electrolyte. And here you got the electric deposit lithium, and now underneath is the copper, and just only in between there's a tiny, you see, very tiny layer of the coating layer. It's almost a 1 micron thickness. So it's compared, but you can see the signal from tellurium. So that's the layer, and the lithium deposit on top of the layer. And throughout all the experiment, you can see the layer stays intact and stays stable during your deposition and dissolution. So by varying the plating capacity from 1 milliamp hour all the way to 5 milliamp hour, you can see basically you just only see the increase of thickness of lithium, but all other features remain relatively stable. So all those things tells us that those layers are pretty stable during a cycling, which is good because you don't want something like falling off of those layers. So, and also the same case, once you strip to 1 volt. So why are you seeing a little bit different? Because once you strip to 1 volt, during the sample the cells, basically it's out the current character will separate from the solid electrolytes. It's now liquid. The lithium is like glue. If you deposit lithium, you're gonna attach everything together. But if you strip out the lithium, it's kind of separate. So it's a bit hard to maintain the current character with the electrolyte once we sample the cell, especially under the fully stripped condition. So that's why we are only able to see the surface, not see the cross sections through. So that's the only difference I want to see. But again, those tellurium are well maintained on the surface. So on the right side is some image on using the baseline cover foil. So you can see direct thing, you can see there's a lot of SCI residues on the surface. Because those are the side reactions between our lithium and your electrolyte. And on the other side, we are fortunate to see some side, because those are really hard to see of the dendrite because it's not as straightforward as the liquid cell. Okay, once you sample, you can image the whole area. And the cross section, since everything and the solid state barriers and everything is buried underneath. Once you desample cells, you might just destroy the interface. But if you only see the cross sections, you still need to rely on your luck. Sometimes you're lucky, you can see some of the dendrite, but most of the case limited by its resolution. You could barely find the dendrite. So that's, I would say, one of the obstacles or something difficult things in terms of characterization of the solid state barriers, especially for the ex situ experiments. But we are a little bit fortunate enough to see some areas. See the lithium starting to penetrate through the electrolyte. You see, it's kind of just grows inside. that finally will lead to the shorting of the cell. Okay, now I'm gonna move to some performance of the again. So this diagram compares with the lithium full cells, like in the lithium ion or solid state batteries or lithium metal, or just using the anode-free configurations. As you can see, with anode configuration, definitely give you the highest or maximize energy density and the specific energy. So on this slide on the left side, you can see this is the working mechanism, which is using the technical like MC811, like commercial 811 as the cathode materials we mix with sulfide electrolyte powder, no carbon, no any of the binders in the cathode side. And on the anode side, it's just like tellurium modified contactor. So during your first charge, your MC, the lithium will come out of your MC, will deposit. No, it will first react with the tellurium or telluride, forming those activation layer, and then it will form lithium metal deposit on top of those layers. And during your discharge, the lithium will dissolve or strip from your current factor and then insert back to your MC. So basically that's the working mechanism for the anode-free solid state batteries. So on the top, you can see that's the cross section of our cathode material. It got like nickel and got a good mixture between the cathode. You see those spherical nanoparticles and the electrolyte. And here just a performance. If you have the baseline copper foil, your cell is gonna, after 10 cycles, the capacity almost decay to below, I would say, 10 milliamp hour per gram. But with tellurium modified, you can just last for, I would say, 50 cycles with relatively high Coulombic efficiency. And a lot of people ask what happens after 50 cycles. The answer is it dies after like 70 cycles. We are honest, we put those like in the this paper has been published in the Advanced Material like early this year, I guess. Yeah, so we put in the supplementary about the whole like cycle life of those batteries. It dies for sure, like after 70 cycles. It's not gonna be comparable to the like lithium metal solid state battery, which can cycle almost like at least 200 cycles without, still get like 80% of the retention. So even though it's modified current character, is still like the second life still limited. Although it's improved, it's still limited. I guess since there's a lot of other issues. For example, if you go this side, honestly, we only modify this surface. But however, you see the lithium and the solid electrolyte, this surface is remains like reactive. It's non-modified. So the reaction might still going on that interface, which I guess probably we need to do more work on that interface as well. So that's one of the possible reasons for the capacity decay, because that reaction also consumes the lithium from the anode side. All right, but at least shows much improved performance compared with baseline cycles, which gives us pretty confidence to see this modified current character really like works. All right, so I'm not gonna move to yes.
What is this needed for the
what
is this needed currently?
The theory, it's sorry, I forgot to put the current standard 0.26. 0.26, yeah. Okay, it's not, yeah, both charge discharge. So, okay, so finally, it's my final research. So previously, we just used a single tellurium like modifier contactor based on the intermetallics, either sodium telluride or lithium telluride. It's a binary intermetallics. So my final topic today is like, we think, okay, you got the binary works, so how about the ternary ones? So in this work, we just developed some like novel ternary sodium antimony tellurium intermetallic. So a lot of people ask what the magic with tellurium is. I don't know why. It seems to be the tellurium just like the magic elements to me. So it turns out to give us a very good performance. So that's why we like the tellurium a lot in our group. So in this work, we developed some novel sodium antimony tellurium intermetallic. So it's pretty straightforward. Basically, we just like spread those antimony telluride particles. Those are commercially available. We just put on top of a piece of sodium foil, and then just fold and roll and mechanical rolling and folding. Make sure that the antimony telluride will react with the sodium metal, and it form those like ternary or perchlorate like structures. And on the right side, you can see those shiny sodium metal. It's around 150 micron thickness. And the index shows the homogeneous distribution of sodium tellurement and those three elements. So by XRD, we have done some calculation, and this is structure. Basically, it's a vacancy-rich sodium like ternary intermetallic. Again, here is a bunch of the electrochemical data given by the Mitlin. I want to emphasize too much. Basically, it shows much better cycling performance in the half cells compared with sodium foil. Here you go. You see those like in the, I think it's in the carbon electrolyte. All right. So now I want to see this. Okay. So here is that's a sodium, the ternary intermetallic sodium we made. In this material, you got excess sodium. What we do is we can strip all the sodium out, all the active sodium out, only left alone the NST skeleton or scaffold. So you can see this is the dark structure. Also, we examine the XRD. There's no metallic sodium left. And then we use this one as our current character. Again, our character is not like pure. It's not like, does not contain any active sodium, but it does contain sodium elements. But the sodium element only exists inside of those. Remember, only those structures. You got those sodium antimony structures. So that's why we are confident to call it like anode-free structure. So on this case, if we deposit sodium on top of NST, you got those smooth dendrite-free structure. However, if you deposit sodium on the baseline copper current character, again, it forms those dendrite, and also you try to strip all the sodium, it forms those dead sodium. You see those some shiny sodium left, although we're trying to strip all the sodium out. So here is some 3D reconstruction from the just by look at the structures. Those are some nanoparticles on the ST. So okay, I guess this is my last slide before I conclude. So again, we made the anode-free sodium batteries. We use the very typical sodium vanadium phosphate as cathode materials. We coupled either so on the top is we call the excess sodium ion, which you can see the cycle, even for the baseline, if you couple with sodium metal, you can still cycle 600 cycles under 1C without failure. But after 600 cycles, the baseline falls, while our modified cell can still cycle up to 1,000 cycles. However, when you come to the anode-free cells, one thing you got the NST, again, those black color of the current character, or the baseline copper current character. So in one case, baseline just dies very fast, almost like 5 cycles. And with the ST, again, it's better than the solid state. At least it got 100 cycles, we made it, because that's in the liquid. But compared with anode excess cycles, you still see the contrast for the anode-free. So basically, that's very challenging to achieve a stable cycling in the anode-free configuration. But at least we've shown through the design of your current character, you can show some improved performance in the anode-free battery. Again, this work has been published in Advanced Materials last year. All right, with that, I want to conclude my talk today. So what we learned from the talk is first, the pure copper current character matter is copper foil or copper foam. It's not a good substrate because the lithium, both lithium and sodium back like poorly on those surfaces. And the wettability of lithium or sodium on the surface of the current character is very crucial. As you can see, if you don't have a good wetting, you'll have a lot of problems. But if you have a good wetting, then you can get a much improved cycling performance. All right, the third is introducing a metal-philic interface is an effective strategy. For example, like the alloy materials, but it requires a mechanical integrity during cycling. You don't want those materials falling off. So that will lead to the early failure of your cell in an anode-free battery. And that's the incentive we design our those stable intermetallics. And finally, the design we have to achieve synergetic optimization of your, let's say, your cathode, separator, electrolyte as a whole. You cannot only rely on the modification of your current characters in order to achieve a very long, stable cycling of the anode-free batteries. So in short words, the anode-free batteries, there is still a long way for the commercialization of the anode-free batteries. but it's still like quite promising through the optimization, or maybe through like our talented people trying to do some more and more efforts, we might be able to see the anode-free, if not with anode-less batteries in the future. Okay, so I guess with that, I want to thank everyone for your attention and thank our audience like online on Zoom for your attention as well. So all those like we are lucky to make a few like covers on the advanced material. So basically those are the 6 advanced material we made over the last couple of years. Those 2 are my work and some of either co-authored or just first authored work. All right, thank you everyone. Yeah.
Right, now do you have any questions? I do have a couple of questions. So when you were talking about lithium or sodium or any kind of metal you use in batteries, and you talk about plating, but basically you're depositing the metal on the anode, right?
No.
So when you're talking about plating, those plating begins at certain spots on the current collector, and like, do you need certain conditions for these spots to start plating the metal?
Right, for sure. Definitely, people will normally regard the plating happens like at a voltage below 0. At the voltage below 0, lithium starts or sodium starts to nucleate and then form those small nucleus and then starting to grow. So that's why it's called plating. And that's why, like, try to use the board. So that's why, like, let's say this is 0 volt, and this, let's say, capacity or into. So normally doing a pure voltage, you always see some kind of features like this thing. So when the voltage drop below 0, the metal starts to nucleate, and that's normally people regard this as the nucleation or potential, although it still remain, I guess it still remain like debatable whether it's because a lot of factors might contribute to this. On the one side, your metal nucleate, on the other side, you strip from your lithium or sodium. So I would say this is more combined factor between your stripping over potential and plating over potential. So in some case, the stripping over potential might also matters. So that's the whole process we call like plating or electric deposition. Yeah.
Questions?
Yes,
so these anode-free batteries, so I was just thinking, is it like a new concept? So the Akira Yoshino got Nobel Prize because he developed carbon there, which can hold lithium. But then, so were people not looking at anode-free batteries then when they were developing it? Or is this like a new field which people are trying to explore?
I would say the concept of anode-free is not that new. If you check the publications, people have already showed the earlier concept like many years ago. I would say definitely not as early as Dr. Yoshino invented the graphite anode. So but the first lithium battery actually start Dr. Whittingham doing the lithium metal batteries. So the lithium metal actually was used before the graphite.
Yeah.
But at that time, people, I think by intuition, people would think, okay, your anode has to have some lithium, or they might have tried those things, but it didn't work well. So I guess early time, people just didn't spend too much time to working on the anode-free batteries. And then, but right now, the lithium metal batteries it's like a hot topic, but it's still not achieved like commercialization. I guess not right now. I guess one of the key issue is the safety issue, and also that's the reason why they abandoned the lithium metal batteries, like you see in the first generation of lithium batteries. The anode-free, the thing people are trying to say, okay, how about reduce the amount of lithium on your lithium metal side, and the maximum would be like completely remove your lithium. So that I guess that's where the concept right now getting like more and more attention, because again, safety is also like the key issue. However, the anode-free is no longer anode-free after the first cycle, because after doing the first charge, again, the lithium starts plating on the current factor. Now it becomes a lithium metal batteries. So it shares a lot. I feel like a little bit things, it's like by the concept, but since that's the normal things people trying to see, I just kind of follow the term, but still it remains, not the accurate descriptions.
It's a lithium not it's a
Yes. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, Chisholm. Yeah.
If you start like Anode-free, like what's the effective plating, what's the thickness, thing?
Ideally, all the lithium should be stripped, but unfortunately, and especially in the fossils, the cathode, even though your cathode has your coulombic efficiency, like say the MC, it's not 100%. I always left alone some lithium, or you have some side reactions. So I cannot see this for sure, but from what we've been observed, that during your first cycle, you got some lithium like residue on your current character side. But however, if you see those, see if we can go back. Okay. Seems I cannot just go back. So in the half cells, if we strip all the way to 1 volt, basically we can remove almost all the lithium from the current character side. So that's why I would say the thickness will remain the same. But for your lithium deposition.
I think now you can go back.
Right, I think. Yeah, so basically these things can be the thickness. You cannot see the thickness very clearly, but well, yeah, I guess after like this is the after scraping, you still like the thickness. I don't think it changed a lot of those current characters because all the lithium was removed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So is the if you're using solid, right? So that's a rigid structure, right? That's a rigid structure. So this is the, let's say this is a collector.
Yeah.
And then when you plate it, so there is a layer of lithium forming in between. So is there some elasticity involved for solid, right?
Yeah, this is the excellent part. It's not in the liquid cell for sure. You have some free space for the lithium to grow. It's easy to understand because separator, right? It's not polymer. It's polymer separator. It's not that rigid. In the solid electrolyte, it's rigid. It's inorganic, and you have current collector. Before cycling, your collector is like definitely attached to the surface of your electrolyte. And during your cycling, your lithium starts to plate. And so the volumetric change almost infinity because you have zero, and now you have lithium. So it accompanies with a huge, like we say, volumetric expansion. So that's also one of the factors leads to the early failure of the solid state battery, because every time you introduce stress, local definite stress for sure, and then during cycling you cannot just remove those stress. But unless you have a good like appetite or something to maintain good pressure on your cell, otherwise you might just lose the contact. So the contact loss is one of the failures. I would say a typical failure in the solid state batteries. Yeah. So that's why I didn't go like dive very deep into that. Again, there's so many factors that would impact its performance in the solid state batteries. Yeah, but also, that's also the case in the liquid one as well. Let's say if you have, because all the other process are the cone cells. In the cone cells, you confine everything like in the tiny cells, and you apply relatively high pressure. And we should done some kind of, and hopefully we'll done some like pod cells, where you have like limited stack pressure. I guess in that case, you might be able to even to like realize the volume change. Yeah. Of those Anode-free cells.
I do have one more question, and that's related to tellurium.
Yeah.
Chemically speaking, what's the reason behind tellurium being more like sodium phenolate compared to like sulfur and even other non-metals? Because of the electronegativity or size or?
Yeah, actually, this is a question that we'll keep asking our collaborators. Say, okay, tell us why tellurium turns out to be the best one. I think they tried really hard trying to develop some kind of model. They study some kind of the parameters in terms of some binding energy, something like those. But if you recall the data I've shown, basically through the calculation, the sulfur also is like sodiophilic, and also actually the selenium is also like sodiophilic. So it seems that sodiophilicity or lithophilicity is not the only factor that affects its performance. There's something else. Just like I mentioned, the chemical affinity of those structures to your backbone. So like whether it's strongly bonded or not. And also there's something else, it's called work adhesion. Basically, some is like depending on the adhesion of those materials and also like on your current character, and also like sodium, the adhesion of sodium on the surface of those materials. So I would say it's very complicated, and I hope with the more like work done by the simulation experiment, we can give a more like clearer answer about why tellurium turns out to be the best.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. So if there are no more questions, let's give another round of applause. Thank you so much for coming today. We see you next time. We'll try to have like these shop talks maybe every 2 weeks or so. So stay tuned in the social media. Make sure you follow us so you can get access to these meetings, also through advertisement. We'll have also some polls and also some other activities for social media. So make sure